Go.
Welcome everyone to the weekly Tanya class. Today we'll be studying together chapter 21. And we spoke about last week, chapter 20, 21, and 22 kind of deviate from the more practical aspect of that defines the first part of Tanya, which is the manual on how to serve Hashem. And it goes into philosophy. But the philosophy is actually the basis, and it defines the way we do things. Everyone acts on a certain philosophy. So the philosophy behind the way of life of Hasidus, the way it's described in Tanya, is in these chapters. It actually defines the philosophy of Hasidus. If you want to put the whole Hasidic movement into words, into one sentence, what did the Baal Shem Tov and later on the Alter Rebbe, what were they? How would you put it into 6 words? So the 6 words would be, and they actually are, this comes from the Baal Shem Tov, that the 6 words that encapsulate the whole idea of Hasidus is godliness is everything, everything is godliness. So in addition, if Judaism would be in 6 words that God exists and He communicates with us, and Hasidus would be going a level deeper, that God in essence is everything and everything is God. There's no dual reality. Not only there's no dual gods, God forbid, there's no dual reality. There's one reality which is entirely, fully godliness. That's what Kabbalah explained. Hasidus brought it down from the theoretical level to the practical level. It addresses the way we behave. Concepts such as joy, a lot of things that define Hasidus and Hasidism is pure faith in God, simple faith, joy, the uniqueness of a Jew just by virtue of being a Jew. These are all things that stem from this philosophy, from this concept that godliness is everything. If godliness is everything, you gotta always be happy. God is present and He's involved.
But
there's
not Hester Panim that He hides His
there
face.
Is, but even then, there's no reason to be depressed, because you can only be depressed if God goes away. If He never goes away, you have to try to uncover the Stepanim that. So,
is there a slight built-in contradiction? If everything means material and spiritual, I'm assuming everything means everything.
Everything means everything.
Everything. So that means if everything is God, in essence, are we saying that God has materiality, but that's where the contraction is, where He hides Himself, because He's not material.
Contradiction.
He only, kind of like a paradox of contradiction.
Let's say it again. Godliness. There's a difference of God and godliness. By saying that everything is God does not mean that everything is a God. You can't go around, God forbid, serving things because they're God. If you think everything is God, means everything is really, there's only one God, and that's the true reality of everything. So the deeper reality of everything around is God. But if you would go and make the mistake and say that defines God, that would be a big and horrendous mistake. It doesn't define Him, but obviously He makes it exist on a constant basis. We'll touch a little bit more on that as we go along.
He's beyond definition, no?
Beyond definition, and therefore, although He creates every definition, no definition defines Him.
So it's godliness is everything, and everything.
Everything is godliness.
Godliness. Okay.
Godliness. God Himself. You don't want to say. Can't say He is this. He's that.
Okay.
It's beyond us.
That's the difference.
In order to understand that better, so that's what we began to discuss in chapter 21. We were explaining the very central belief that we actually say it in the prayers every day, in the prayers before the prayers, the pre-prayer, it's called the Tfilat HaShachar. Ata hu Hashem achav nivra ha'olam v'ata mish nivra olam. You are the same God before the world was created and after the world was created. In other words, creation of the world had not the slightest effect on you. God did not change in the slightest way. Change is a concept which is associated to physical, to finite. And which is finite has changes, sometimes for the better, sometimes for the worse. God doesn't have to ever get better because He's perfect. And obviously cannot become worse because He's perfect. His not changing doesn't mean that He doesn't update Himself every once in a while. There's no need for it. The computer has to be updated. God doesn't have to be updated because He's perfection. He's the source of all perfection. So what does it mean that nothing changed? Yeah, does it mean that the world that we're living in is an imagination? There's God. We're actually acknowledging that there's God before He created the world. There's God after He created the world. So we could say it wasn't a significant change. It didn't make much of a difference. But is it right to say nothing changed? He's the same exact. The answer to the question is a definite yes. It is right to say so. Nothing changed, even though an entire world, and not just one world, many worlds were created. Our world is the smallest and the most insignificant of many other worlds, spiritual worlds. Preceded us. They're still in existence, but they worlds of angels and souls, and nonetheless, the greatest tzaddikim, the greatest people, the greatest souls, they don't change anything in God. And to explain that, we delved into the concept that God spoke the world into being. Usually we do things. Our words don't have such power. They have power, but our words don't create. Our words could express feelings, they could give ideas of how to make things what we need to do. But God, all He had to do just to make the world exist was to speak it into being. He said 10 things, 10 sentences, and everything in the world comes from those 10 sentences. It's the code. If you look on your computer, you have it on YouTube, stats for geeks, that it is. Have like a little option on the side. You can always look at the code that's behind it. There's a code behind everything in the world. It's words. Words create things. God's words create things.
Wasn't it Lashon Hara that kept us in the desert for 40 years?
Yeah.
So it's how important words can be
Words
even for
could
humans.
be very important. It says that King Solomon said, life and death are up to the tongue. But that's usually, we have an effect, but not that strong an effect. It can't actually create. It might alter the course of things, but to create or to stop creating, we don't have that power. God's creation of the world is solely dependent on His words. Those 10 sentences include in it everything, which is a topic which Alter Rebbe discusses in the second part of Tanya more at length.
In this book?
It's in that book particularly.
Oh, there's more Tanya than this?
Yeah, that's 1 out of 5 that.
Oh.
I guess we're not going to be able to create materially with words, but it's going to be probably our words that fulfill the mission, that create the gula, that bring.
Our words definitely have
Shlemus.
power into them.
Yeah.
But let's look
Can
at
make a chair out of
let's
it.
look at our words compared to ourselves. I said that last week that you don't have a sack of words that run out. As long as you're alive, you can speak. As long as your mouth. The power of speech that the person has is infinite. It's unlimited. You can speak as much. As long as he's alive, you can keep speaking. There's no limit. You have those what they call the filibusters. Yeah.
But I've seen people hospital after a
that?
stroke, they can't speak filibusters when they could just speak
Just
for
talk
hours,
all day.
just to kill time.
Yeah.
It's what a filibuster is?
To kill bills.
Yeah, like I think
Congress.
I don't know what the record is, 26 or 30, I don't know how many hours they just keep talking, and they can't put through business that they need to in the
Filibuster.
Senate or the House or wherever.
Huh?
Filibuster.
Filibuster.
Oh, that's a government thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
political thing.
So we could speak a lot. Sometimes it's nonsense, sometimes it's very, very important stuff. But our speech, we're going to get to what our speech does do, but generally let's look at our speech, not our speech, more our power of speech, but any given sentence or word that we said, compare that to the power of speech, which is actually the most external of your powers, because a person could really live his life without speaking. person, when you're in a society, we need to communicate. But in general, it doesn't. A person could live without speech. Just a way to express things to others. So compare the words to the power of speech. One sentence, one utterance is a finite, very limited thing. It may carry a lot of meaning. It comes from other places, but the word itself, if you look at just the word, the utterance, compared to my being, to my power of speech, is very insignificant. It's so insignificant, since we're talking about the relationship of the finite and the infinite. So it's insignificant. A million words or 2 words compared to an infinite power of speech it's incomparable. Let's compare it a little deeper to the power of thought, which creates the speech, which generates to the power of speech what to say. So it gets even further. Compared to emotions and convictions that precede even words. When you think with words. You think you're putting it into words in your mind. But then there's what you're thinking. That power of to have to feel, the power to understand, to perceive. So that compared to the word, to those words, is even further. It's infinite compared to infinite compared to infinite, and to the person's soul himself, his essence of his soul, which is beyond that. Even his feelings and his beliefs. So that this is just within our world. This is me and my own words. My words have no significance, although I said them, and saying them, that I don't deny the fact that I said them. It's still right to say that my power of speech did not change because of words that I said. And for sure, my power of thought didn't change because of words that I said, and definitely my emotions and my convictions, and for sure the essence of my being stayed exactly the same no matter what I said and what I thought, what I felt. So let's just take this concept and apply it to Hashem, to God. The world that He set into being, that He spoke into being, is one word. Look at yourself. The words don't change you. So definitely the whole universe, and all the galaxies, and which is also a great vast number, and that's just the physical world, which is the smallest. The spiritual worlds. It's all a few words to Hashem. What are a few words compared to Him? So saying that God did not change, even though the world was created, is a very true statement. It didn't change. Just like your power of speech didn't change because He spoke, and definitely your essence of your being didn't change because He spoke. God didn't change because He spoke, and these words that He said are so insignificant compared to God's essence.
What if somebody's a liar then, and they're always lying? Then their power goes down because people aren't going to believe them anymore.
That's not about. That's how people perceive what they say, but not it didn't affect their power of speech. Power of speech is the power to speak. They can speak.
Doesn't matter what
people
they say.
won't believe them.
Right.
You're talking about politicians, basically.
And or people that just nothing is exactly what they're saying is it's not
Right.
true really.
It seems like
What you're saying is the politically correct way to say it.
Okay.
Politically correct way to say a liar is a politician.
Lashon Hara kills 3 people, right? If somebody speaks Lashon Hara, you're killing yourself, the listener, and the person. So that seems to affect your being. I mean, you just killed yourself through your speech.
It affects your being. Let's strictly look at the power of speech. Was that affected?
If you're dead, that means something that
Your power is not dead.
No, but
you
saying
have no ability anymore to use it.
It seems
until
like
your
if you keep using your
soul
faculties
comes-
expression to sin, you're going to weaken your being. You will weaken. And the person that uses their faculties expression to do mitzvahs strengthens their being. You can see physical differences in people who are like very much involved with Torah and people who are not or doing lots of averos. You can see physical differences in their being, in their bodies. So it seems that it does affect their being.
That's I would say that's what they're saying and what they're doing.
Right, and it affects their being.
But the aspect of speech that's there, it definitely improves. But we're talking about the power itself. Look at the power of speech, the power of thought. That doesn't change. It's what you do with it and how it affects.
It only gets
There is that.
muddled
Of
up.
course, there's that concept that the neshama benefits from doing something good.
Gets stronger, healthier.
The
And
neshama
the other
does.
way,
It's. I would say it's not so much the neshama gets stronger. It's more that the neshama, the way it's in the body. The neshama has a stronger way to express itself. The neshama, just like which is a part of God, also doesn't change. That's why the greatest sinner. We only see this in the negative side, because if someone does good, then it stays. But someone sins, it says even though a person sinned, he remains a Jew.
I guess the most essential kernel, like a certain point. You're saying, I think, like that certain aspect.
That aspect is not changeable. And when a person passes on, so let's say the concept of Gehenna, of purgatory, the soul has to be cleansed. The soul itself will stay the same. The soul is eternal. It doesn't die. And the soul and all its powers. So what the person did, since he did certain things which he shouldn't have been doing, it puts some dirt onto the neshama. The neshama can't express itself. That's why someone who sins, there's negative results. Someone who does mitzvahs, there's positive. What is it that soul gets to shine and express itself in a stronger way? The mitzvah doesn't really add and change the soul.
Just whether it's
The only thing that the mitzvah does do to the soul is connect it to Hashem,
pretty big.
which is pretty big, but it
It's a big
doesn't
deal.
really change the soul itself. The soul
Right.
stayed the same soul. It just
Right.
now the soul was utilizing a power which previously didn't have. Now it does that. And we're not coming to diminish the importance of what we say. It's actually very important, but let's look at the concept of words themselves compared to the power of the soul, to the faculties of the soul. Many words, few words have no significance compared to the power of speech. And sometimes it will affect your life in a more general way, but not the actual power. So that is how much more so with regards to Hashem. So that was pretty much a summary of chapter 20. But obviously when we're talking about Hashem, that God, we cannot apply any physical descriptions to Him. God is beyond that.
But I just realized the resolution here. When God's talking about God's speech, so obviously God doesn't speak of errors, right? So God's always on Sadatov. When he said there's God's speech, which is always Sadatov. So if you compare like a person speaking always Sadatov from the Torah, then without dealing with evil and how that could affect the soul, then the Dugma seems to be parallel. Then you can see how the power of the soul is infinitely like more resourceful, I guess, than any particular expression. When you're only dealing with Sadatov, then you can see it more clearly, the parallel. So when you're dealing with evil, then it seems it doesn't.
Evil, you can look at it the same way, that evil is just covering up on the expression of the soul.
Mm-hmm.
It's not really affecting it, it's just not letting it be expressed. It's like you take a diamond and you cover it up with
Burying it all the way in the ground.
deep down in the ground with mud and dirt. It doesn't stop being a diamond. It
Buried.
just doesn't. No one benefits from this diamond.
Mm-hmm.
Just covered up. But the powers themselves are they don't change. So that explains to us the concept of Hashem. You are the same before you created the world and after you created the world. The creation of the world is not a imagination. It's a true reality, but it's a reality which is insignificant because it's. Just think of one word compared to my power of speech, and multiply that times ad infinitum, like they say. Hashem, our whole world and all my infinite power of speech is actually a finite creation compared to Hashem's infinity. So we're using the idea of speech to describe how Hashem spoke the world into being. However, there is a difference, and this also answers the questions that the two of you raised. That our speech does affect us. That let's define the concept of speech. Words. What defines words? There's something that's in my mind, a thought that before I said it and after I said it. What changed? If I want to tell someone you're a bad guy, or you're a good guy.
Disclosure.
Yeah. So the concept itself stayed the same. There is actually it is explained. This when you say something. One of the best tips for anger management is if you're angry, be quiet. It's gonna tone down the anger.
It's impossible.
Huh?
Yeah.
To be
Impossible.
to be quiet in anger.
Walk away, they say walk away.
to be quiet.
No,
Yeah,
but
you're right.
breathe,
Exactly.
exercise, breathing exercise, something
There's
to.
different things you could do.
Yeah, that can
Yeah, that's the trick for anger management. Don't go to your therapist when you're angry. Not only don't scream at your wife, don't scream at your therapist. Don't call your friend. Just be quiet for 10 minutes.
Or go jog around the block, something to get out
do something,
the.
but don't express.
Go away, but come back.
Because by expressing, you're actually gonna make it bigger. But the truth is, you're not gonna change it. You're gonna just make yourself more aware of this thing that made you angry. That's why it's gonna grow. Not in the sense that it's gonna the concept. The concept is the same concept. It's in my head, in my heart. When I say it, what you say? What was the word? Disclosure. I disclosed it. I let it out. Now, disclosure would be fine sometimes, but as long as I could take it back, Control Z. But another
undo.
defining
Undo.
undo things. Another defining factor of speech is the fact that once it leaves you, it ain't coming back. You can't take your words back.
Put it back in the can.
Think twice before you say it, because once you said it, it's out there. It's recorded. So even if there's no one hearing, there's an expression. I think it comes from the Tanakh. That Oif Hashamayim Elech Hasakol, the birds will somehow carry it. It says in Pirkei Avos, don't say something that you don't want to be heard, because it ultimately will be heard. The safest place for secrets is inside you. There's nowhere safe enough to store secrets outside of yourself. The best way to keep it safe is just not to say it. That's something about speech. That once you said it, since you are not the only thing in the world, there are other people in the world, other things. So once the disclosure also brings with it, you lose control over it. It could be in a good way. That when a person says good things, so when I had a good idea in my mind, then I was a good person. When I said nice words to someone, my good feelings towards that someone reached him, and it could now spread. That I made someone feel good. And you lose control, but in a good sense. You don't know where you'll bump into it next time. But we see it more on the negative side, unfortunately, that when I say things and I lose control over them, once I said it, it's out there and it's gonna haunt you. It'll come around to you one day from somewhere you never expected it to be come from. Huh?
One of them.
Or saying things. Lashon hara. Lashon hara is people look at things.
Oh.
You get a call at 3 in the morning.
Huh?
You get a call at 3 in the morning.
So, what is it about the speech? So getting back to our topic, which of these? So we have two aspects of speak: exposure and words.
Exposure or disclosure?
Exposure.
Disclosure.
Disclosure. I'm sorry. And the words leaving my control. Like the fact that I can't retract them. So Hashem's speech, which of these could we say? So if we take the idea of speech, that I said something, previously it was in me, now I expressed it, I said it to someone else, it's not in me, exclusively in me anymore. My thoughts, or my opinions, or my feelings about any given topic are already out of me, they're not something that I keep to myself. That obviously cannot be said of Hashem. Because Hashem could always retract, and the simple reason is because when I say something to someone, that someone existed before I said it, There was me and there was him. When I said it, he heard it, and now it's in his control. If to believe it or not to believe it or to pass it further. But it's already not in my control. The reason is because I'm not the only thing in the world. So if I wanted to keep it a secret, I'd have to keep it in myself. The second I let it out of myself, it's out in the cloud, like they say. So it's not there is something else. Why do my words, when they leave me, I can't take them back? The reason is because I release them to the public space, or to the private space, which it could become public. But they're not in me. They're not locked up in me anymore. Because I'm not the only thing here. There's other people. Hashem, you can't say that about Hashem. There's nothing outside of him. Where's the outside? God speaks. So when I speak, there's when the thoughts are within me, and when I speak, I'm telling them to you. That's speech. That's the definition of speech. It's the most simple, basic definition of speech. Is communicating. Communication requires there to be an other.
But when Hashem speaks, He speaks to everyone.
He speaks to no one. There's nothing besides him.
To no one and to everyone. It's both.
How could we say that God is communicating? That concept of communication is between two individuals, between two different people. One communicates to the other. There's no other. Einod Mavadeh. There's nothing besides Hashem.
But we don't see simanim or something that sometimes means to do this or that. That seems like it's. We don't know for sure. It's true. That Hashem, that He's saying, all right, go this way or go that way, when you can't decide about something.
No, of course not. God is speaking.
Simanim.
We're just trying to understand why we call it speech.
Hmm.
If speech means to communicate to another, what does it mean that God is communicating to another? Who's the other?
Well, in art, like you have also echo, right?
God's speech makes us. Yeah, that's the first function of God's speech. Then there's another function of God's speech that God communicates with us. But let's start from the beginning before we get. What does it mean when I have an idea, a thought in my mind, and I'm saying it to you? That's because you don't know it, and I want to share it with you. So I'm taking it out for myself and giving it to you. Where is God speaking? Who is He speaking to? When God spoke the world into being, who is He speaking to? We're not talking about the second realm of speech. After there's a world, God is communicating. God spoke the world. Yeah. Once there is a world, which you have to explain how that works, God could speak to the world. There's already a sort of an other that we could understand, but we're talking about God's first speech, the speech that created the world, made the world exist. Why are we calling it speaking? I can't speak to someone when there's no one to speak to. So Hashem is speaking. He says, God said, "Let there be light." Who is He saying it to? We're sitting 5,000 years later and reading from the Torah. God said. So now God could tell us that this is what I said. But when God was saying it, who was He saying it to? If that's what speech means.
Maybe the souls were created before He created. Was it before the creation? Maybe it was on the blueprint. I don't know.
And who was the blueprint said to?
Nobody. God knows. He's the only
So
one.
He didn't say it, He wrote it.
He would be the only one who knew it.
Why are we using the expression spoke? Hashem spoke the world into being. Speaking is by definition a communication between a one and another. If there's no other, what does it mean that God spoke? Yeah, I think that disclosure means the same thing, right? I'm disclosing to someone else.
But everything changed once they ate from the Pri Etzadat, that everything became duality, and that's where everything got dual into two.
The question is still a question. That's when you made.
Well, He spoke to Himself.
He spoke to Himself.
When did He create the angels, though?
What is it? Rabbi Nisav Shamayim.
Let us, He said,
That's
let
up
us.
there, right?
Let us
What is
make,
it? Why is it called Dibur?
Let us. That
Yeah.
could have been angels.
Why is it called Dibor?
I'm not sure.
Well, you have to create angels.
Angels were created. There's different types of angels.
Did he-
Most angels were created on the fifth day.
Speak
The
to
fifth
create
day.
angels also.
Fifth day. So
Okay.
that's on the sixth day. He said, "Let us make man."
Did He even have to speak to angels or whatever He thought? I don't know if it had to.
Now, what does it
Be
mean?
spoken.
What does it mean when God speaks to an angel? Speaks to a prophet? Is there a voice? If the
Send
prophet,
him- sends
the
the
prophet
dream.
takes a tape recorder with him.
No, the prophet has a dream or something.
It's something mystical.
Huh?
It's a dream or something. The prophet, no, some kind of nevuah
What does he
dream.
hear? What does he?
Something which forms. That's a little easier to understand, where the man's mind is kind of
Because obviously
the
we're
words.
talking about speech as a metaphor, more in the concept just like speech. And actually, this
Well, for a prophet, it has to be speech.
this ties into to what to the
Yeah, but it
point.
could be images that make him.
So
think
let's
a certain
look at
way.
another defining factor of speech, which is what we call revelation. When I speak, two things happen. First of all, I speak to you, but then there's also the fact that I'm speaking to myself. So usually people don't have to speak to themselves, because they work it out inside them, and the main reason why we speak is because we want to communicate with someone else who's outside of myself. But the truth is that there is a certain concept of speaking to yourself. There's the idea of speaking to yourself, which means you want to make yourself aware. It doesn't necessarily come out with sound, and it's not recordable. But the idea of speech in the sense of, you can still use the word disclosure, but besides for a disclosure to another, there's a disclosure to yourself. Gilui. So usually we think of disclosure as disclose to other, but you have to disclose to yourself as well.
Gilu, like from Gilu Arayot, same word? Gilu?
Gilui means revealing, yeah.
Oh.
Gilui Arayot means revealing,
What does
it's
Arayot
supposed to
mean?
be uncovered.
That should not be uncovered. That should be
Huh?
left covered.
Arayot means private.
Private.
It's-
Revealing of
Gilui Arayot
privacy.
means unveiling a certain privacy which is supposed to be kept private.
And Gilui
Sin.
means uncover, Gilui?
Gilui means to uncover, to reveal.
For real.
So the sense of when I say something I can't take it back is because I said it to another. But if we're looking at the deeper meaning of speech, which is the concept of revealing, which could also exist between me and myself, that speech, that type of speech it's not separate from me. I could retract it in a certain sense. In other words, I'm deciding within myself if to feel in a certain way. A person feels anger. If he doesn't express it in the lower form of speech, as long as the speech is just to himself, he could alter it. He's not going to feel the same feelings. If I see someone, I say, this is in Shalom Bayis, and you feel it. Sometimes the spouse feels anger at the other. Happens sometimes. Yeah? If you said it, you expressed it, then it's very hard to fix it. It's up to the other party, or any relationship really, to fix it. You could say, I'm sorry, you could try, but it's his decision. His or her decision to forgive you. And also then, you never know if the ill feelings really are gone or not, or the person is just overcoming them. That's why it's always better to try to solve things before you say them. When it's within yourself, the feelings could change. I did speak to myself. Something happened and this person made me upset. But I could process it within myself and talk to myself and argue with myself and convince myself. And at a certain point, I will alter those feelings. But what I said previously is still in my control, and I could change it. I could change those words, that concept of revelation. So when we're saying that God spoke the world into being, we're not in the sense of God spoke to another, because there's no other, there never will be another. There is no other, there's only God. More in the sense that God revealed. That there was something that was within God, so to speak, and God made it revealed. To who? To Himself. And everything, the whole reality that's going on is all within godliness. It's all and therefore God has total control. If God wants something to cease to exist, there's a famous story to say that there was once a chassid and a misnagid, an opponent of chassidus, which got into philosophical discussion. Chassid was trying to explain some basics. So he told them, if God wants to destroy the world, what is He going to do? So the misnagid says God's going to make a big fire. okay, but now there's a fire. If God wants to get rid of the fire, what is He going to do? So God's going to bring a big rain, a big flood. Okay, but now there's ashes. Well, if God wants to make the world disappear, it's not good.
You just have to stop talking.
Exactly. And God, just like, you're thinking about something and you stop thinking, it doesn't exist anymore. You don't have to change it and God just has to stop saying, and the world will cease to exist as if it never was. That's because God's speech is not. Now, when I stop talking I'm talking to someone, I stop talking. Let's say I'm saying not nice things to someone. Yeah, so I could stop and try to do some damage control and not continue. But what I said is left me already. I have no control over it. It's because it went into the other. In our case, there's no other. The world says, "Hu mekayma shel olam, v'ein olam mekayma." Famous saying in Talmud. God is the location where the world exists within, but the world does not contain Him.
We call Hashem Makom, don't we?
That's why we call Hashem Makom, right? One of the expressions, Baruch HaMakom. God is, we call Him the place. God is the place of everything. Everything is within godliness. And when God wants to say something, wants something to exist, then it exists. When he finishes or does not interested anymore, He stops it. It's a revelation within Himself. That's why it's called speech. The reason why we're calling it speech is we're speaking in an allegorical form. That the concept of speech, the way it's in a mashal, it's not exactly just like God's thought. It's not like our thought. We don't understand how you could know something in advance and still have free choice. The famous question, right? But the most simple answer, which is not really understood, that's why people don't really like it so much, is that my thoughts are not like yours. I don't think the same way. Could you know something, past, present, future at the same time? You can't know it. I could, God says. So I could also know what you're going to do and at the same time allow you to have free choice. It doesn't affect. And God's speech is not like our speech. Our speech has two factors. First, it reveals to myself. Second, it reveals to an other. When it comes to godliness, there's no such a concept as other. It's only the idea of revelation to Himself. This reminds me of a story. There's a rabbi, I think lives in Israel now. Modern Orthodox rabbi, what's his name? He's working on, he's translating the Talmud, the Steinsaltz version.
The English art scroll, is it?
Not the art scroll, what's his name?
Another one? No.
Anyway, he was a young rabbi, and he had at a certain point he was having a midlife crisis. He had different questions in faith, and heard of the Rebbe, so he wanted to arrange a meeting with the Rebbe. Who could he talk to? He was a rabbi. What does a rabbi do when he has questions in Judaism? So he goes to a bigger rabbi. So he.
With Rabbi Schneerson he wanted to speak?
He calls the Rebbe's office. I don't know if he wanted to speak to the Rebbe or wanted to arrange it. I'm not sure what he knew.
So he called Brooklyn from Israel?
He was living in America. He was living in, I think, in Maryland somewhere. The pulpit over there. I can't believe his name slipped my mind. Anyway, it'll come back to me. So he's on the phone. He's speaking to Rabbi Chadok, the Rebbe's secretary. And he's describing his predicament. He's saying, I'm a rabbi here and there, and Rabbi Weinberg, Rabbi Hirsch Weinberg. What was his name? That is his name. Because I'm having questions and doubts, and so suddenly he hears another voice on the line, which turned out to be the Rebbe's voice. So he didn't introduce himself yet. So he was planning to. So here he's telling him his problem, and suddenly hears another voice on the line, and the Rebbe is telling Rabbi Chodakov. Rebbe sometimes listen in to the phone lines. The Rebbe tells Rabbi Chodakov there's a Rabbi Weinreb in Maryland. You should speak to him. So he says Yiddish, but that's me. I am wanderer. So that's exactly what I mean. Sometimes a person has to talk to himself. Has to help himself. So that's the definition of speech. In our case, is kind of the aspect of speech of revealing. Revealing, doesn't have to be to another; it can be also to yourself.
Are we appealing?
And this type, and here it doesn't leave you; it stays within you.
When we're talking to ourselves, just for clarification, are we talking to our soul, our essence, our consciousness? What are you actually? When we're talking to ourselves, we expect an answer from ourselves. So what are we? We're talking to ourselves. So who are we addressing? The soul portion of ourselves, or our intellectual faculties?
It's usually the soul is kind of addressing your consciousness, your core beliefs and your core being, which the core belief of a Jew is really part of his, like we explained earlier. The Jew's connection to Hashem is something which is natural.
So we're like troubleshooting ourselves, we're defragging our system.
Basically. On a theological level, on an emotional level, something now that doesn't. Not always we have all the answers. We have them, but sometimes we need help to find them, and it is important to speak. We're not discouraging speech. Speech is a very useful tool. Sometimes there's help that you need to get from someone else. Sometimes you could offer help to someone else. So there's a concept that do more than you say. Keeping quiet is a protection for wisdom. There's another famous one that a word is worth $1 and silence is worth 2.
Mhm.
The Hasidim will explain that silence is one silence, so it's worth 2. But every word is worth 1, so 3 words is already better than 1 silence. 2 words is equal to silence. Sometimes we need to speak. But just to bring this in back to the topic at hand, God's speech. That's what God's speech means. And another place that we see it, that when I speak, I'm actually creating another physical being. Besides for the fact that I'm telling it to another physical being, my speech creates sound, it creates breath. It has a life of its own, my speech. Whereas the speech that I speak to myself is all within me. It doesn't take upon a different being that I kind of give it some meaning. When I speak, the breath that comes out of me takes on a meaning that I give to. I put in the content of the words. However, the words themselves have a life of their own, and that's why I have no control once they leave me. That's that aspect of speech. But the aspect of the speech of revelation to myself, sometimes that remains. So I think, let's end off with something connected to today's event. Yeah, the eclipse, right? So when Scott was saying,
I was very excited when I saw it through the glasses. I said, that little black space is actually blocking the sun. Because I look at the sun and the moon all the time, every day, for years. Every day, when I started studying the lunar calendar, I was reading books on it. But now I actually saw the phenomenon today. It was stunning, absolutely stunning.
What do we have? Now let's speak of another area of speech. So that's the speech that Hashem created the world with. But then there is a sense of speech where Hashem is communicating with His creations. Now it isn't really an other, because we're not really an other to Hashem, but we have that sense of, as if I'm another. It's God, there's His creations, which are actually being sustained on a constant basis from God's continuous speech. So God is talking. When God spoke to Moses, God is talking. We know that about when God gave the Torah, there was a miracle that He said two words at the same time. He didn't have a mixer. It wasn't a DJ. He said he uttered 2 words at the same time. The truth is, God is doing this the whole time, and God spoke to Moses. God had to say Moses, 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 so Moses could exist. And he also had to speak to Moses and tell Moses to tell the Jews, do this and do that, and don't do this and don't do that. So there's these two levels of speech. So the first level, the first concept of speech is more obvious that there's no other, because it's creating the other. But then there's a second level of speech, the concept of prophecy. God spoke to Moshe, God spoke to the prophets, God speaks to each and every one of us in different ways. I'll go around feeling you're a prophet, but you definitely could listen to those messages. So that level, the other feels like an other, but even there, the other is not really an other. There's no other. That layer of speech could only exist on top of the first layer of speech, which is speaking you into being. Only when God speaks you into being, you could exist and feel that you're an other through God's tzimtzum. The idea of God concealing himself and allowing you to have this sense, which is totally not true. The fact that we exist is totally true. But the fact that we exist, we feel that we exist as independent beings, that is an imagination. And that is a result of a tzimtzum, of God's contraction. And here we come into the eclipse. So you were describing the eclipse before. You have the sun, which was how many times?
It was 400 times the diameter and the distance.
And Tanya actually says that it gives a bit
They have a number there.
different number, and it says
do the
that
math. 250,000 divided into 93 million. Well, you have a calculator. Multiply 200.
Yeah, it's charging.
Oh, you were that close.
We have
That's
a
close.
we have a
Keep going,
savant
yeah,
here.
keep going.
Well, just multiply it by that.
So you're saying how many
zeros.
times
Yes,
bigger
it says
the moon
400.
is? The sun
It
is
says
the
the
moon?
What's
sun.
the number?
it says, and Tanya writes that the sun is 167 times larger than planet Earth.
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 That's Earth.
And the moon, it says the moon goes to sun.
That would be the other eclipse.
Anyway,
So you want to know how many times bigger the sun is than the moon, you're saying?
Right, because the ratio of the distance.
so what happens here? We didn't really get to feel it, but let's
You're saying
look
you could
at
block it off perfectly if they were lined up.
the
The moon said, "Look at me today."
sun shining. The fact that the moon got in between
Yeah.
us and the sun. Who felt the difference?
The sun for
No, we felt it.
The sun didn't feel any difference.
the sun is for
The moon felt it.
The moon also? No, the moon didn't feel. The moon was
Look
getting
out.
what it was always getting.
you see
We,
it.
the third party over here that's on the bottom of the pyramid, usually we get the sun by day. Suddenly the Malach moved into place and blocked the sun for a short while. But to the sun it didn't change. And let's take the concept of tzimtzum, saying that the fact that God makes us exist, creates us, is true. Our existence, though, is entirely dependent. It's not like the soul and the body. The soul gives the body life, it doesn't give the body existence. It makes the body move, makes the body live. But the body has a separate soul that makes it exist. God is not only the soul of the world, God is the body of the world as well. And however, God created this idea of tzimtzum. He puts this sort of curtain, block in between himself and us, which makes us feel sometimes that we know that there is a sun out there, but the sun is not shining at us. The truth is the sun is shining.
That block is in Navish Bahamas, you say?
The block is the tzimtzum, the idea of tzimtzum. But not like in the eclipse. In the eclipse, the block was the moon, right? Which wasn't the sun. The tzimtzum is a create. No, the sun didn't create the moon. And that's why the moon could get in the way of the sun. And the sun doesn't care. But it can get, and it keeps shining. But it doesn't reach us. But in the case of Hashem is the creator. He's created himself. He created the block. He created us. So the just like we are in his space, so the blockage is also in his space. It's actually a creation of him. The expression that's used, it's like a turtle. A turtle carries its own house. It's part of him. The tzimtzum is part. The power of concealment is just as godly a power than the power of creation. But the lesson from the eclipse is that to the sun it didn't make a difference. And we have to know that although the concealment does affect us, nevertheless it's only concealment. We don't see God, but it doesn't mean that God doesn't see us. So even if we're in situations where we feel that God is hiding from us, we don't see that revelation. We should know that God sees us and is with us, knows what's going on, and He's shining at us. But He's shining us a different type of light. It's a darker light, but it's also a form of light. It's also a form of being. But let's to wrap up, and as we're going to move on into the more practical application of this concept, to sum up, what the Alter Rebbe is teaching us in these two chapters, and he continues actually in the following chapter a little bit in the same theme. But there he gets into more practical application of it, is that everything in the world, the whole world, is Hashem's speech. Hashem speaks us into being on a constant basis. Therefore, nothing in the world could exist independently of God. So, living that truth, this is how we come to that's the theory. Theory, not in the sense that it's a theory that this is the reality, but it's a more theoretical aspect of the reality. Everything needs God. God speaks the world into being. This being the case, living in a reality, living with an awareness of this truth, is accepting, is acknowledging that God is everything, and denying this truth, either in a sense of on a theological, philosophical level, which is the worst, or just behaving not like this way, meaning not living a life which isn't totally imbued with this truth that it's all about a God and therefore I have to serve God in every single way, is in essence an act of denying God's existence, which is the most severe avodah zarah. You don't even have to do anything, just feeling arrogant. The Talmud says that someone that feels arrogant is as if he's serving idols. It's the same thing. If you are failing to acknowledge that although the moon got in the way between you and the sun, but the sun keeps keeping shining, you start thinking that the moon is really blocking the sun from you, just like blocking you from the sun, just like it's blocking the sun from you if you make that mistake. So an eclipse is true, but also not really true. I'm thinking about it now that the sun is bigger. It sees us even through the moon.